If you've ever seen just a dumb, stupid, ignorant car build online and wondered exactly how much it cost, well, this one's for you.
I'm speechless.
To celebrate the start of a new and probably even dumber Demon 170 build, I figured it was finally time to add up the numbers on the original Demon build and see exactly how much money we sank into it. I don't really have a great reason as to why I haven't done it to this point. I guess it was fear, maybe.
I mean, if you don't know how much you spend, it doesn't count. That's how it works, right?
Technically, yes. The credit card companies do not feel the same way,
Yeah.
but today we get to find out. It's almost weird to look back and try to imagine what I was thinking when I laid eyes on this car for the first time. I left SEMA to go check out an IAA lot that was in Vegas, and I don't know what I was doing. SEMA got me way too cocky. Like, I'm gonna go buy the biggest piece of junk I could possibly find, and I'm sure it'll work out great. In the end, I suppose it did work out okay, but it took some time. Let's just pretend I wasn't all hyped up on this thing. Looking at this car, what do you realistically think that's worth?
It's a piece of trash. Just throw it away. It worth nothing. Zero.
That's wrong. It's clearly worth something. We knew there were some good parts in it. Not many, but some. If I was buying this car with common sense rationale, not thinking, oh, this would be cool to rebuild, not off that SEMA high, $5,000.
Max.
I didn't know what I was in for at all. It went for over $15,000. I don't know who was bidding against me. If you're out there and you're watching this video or you watched any of this build, please just get in touch with me. Tell me what you were thinking. By the time it was all said and done, with auction fees, it was $17,200 for that thing. And of course, then there's the added bonus of having to ship it entirely across the country. It was another $1,200. I also want to know what was going through people's head when they saw that piece of trash on a trailer. Outside of the cost of the car, the first video was just tearing stuff down. We hadn't got to spending any money yet. That's back when things were good. We were just tearing stuff apart, having fun, watching transmissions fall out of the car. Those were the good old days, you know?
Checking the engine.
That is still a moment that is burned into my brain. The water coming out of that engine, terrible. Even on the second video, it was more tearing the engine down, and I mean truly tearing it down. But it was about this point when I realized exactly how bad this thing was, and that's when it started to click. That's when I realized that this was not going to be as easy as I thought. I was really stretching to find anything that was usable, or at least didn't need to be gone through. In the end, we did find some stuff. We had like the block. All that got to be salvaged, though it wasn't cheap, and we'll get to that here in a second. Now is where we start spending some money. So the story behind this random red eye chassis, somebody had saw one of these first videos and sent me an email, told me what he had, and it looked like it was the perfect chassis to reuse to fix the Demon. That was before I decided to just, you know, throw that all out the window and not use it because I wanted to make it into a second project, which was just beyond stupid. Either way, it came with a 5.7 liter automatic in.
Yes, true.
I didn't really have a use for it. It was still a halfway decent engine. We ended up giving it away to one of you guys, but I did get a smoking deal on it. It was like $2,000, something like that. I ended up putting it on the shelf because I wanted to use it for a project, and then somebody bashed into it with a forklift.
I can't explain.
No,
Accidentally.
with a Camaro, by the way.
Sorry, a Camaro that was on a forklift. At that point, being that it was burnt up, being that it didn't have a title, if I recall, and being that it had a newly, freshly destroyed quarter panel, I figured it's just better to axe it. I took a few parts that I needed for the Demon build, and I was actually able to sell the rest of that car to pay for the thing in its entirety, and I was left over with these. A set of stitched Alcantara door panels that were in flawless shape out of that red eye, and I plan on using these on the Demon 170. Ironically, these things are like $800 or $900 each, so in the long run, this is probably the best thing we ever got from that car. And while the red eye ended up being a wash, the next parts car, the manual silver Hellcat, this one cost us some money. Looking back at it now, the silver car was actually really nice. It smashed down the passenger side, it still ran and drove, and did really good burnouts. Me, I guess, being in my Mopar infancy, I thought that we could take that thing, stick it on the Demon, be on our way, no problem. Did not work out like that. But all in all, that car ran me $28,200. Now, I know that sounds bad, but we sold most of it. I didn't need all of it. I ultimately ended up only taking the transmission, the rear cradle, the clutch and brake pedals, anything that was manual specific. I had thought that I was going to be able to take the wiring out of that car as well, but I learned pretty quickly on that that wasn't going to work, primarily because that was a hydraulic power steering car, and it was an earlier car. I think it was a 2015 or 2016, and we could use pretty much none of that. Out of that $28,200, I ultimately only ended up being down about $5,000 on that car. I sold all the rest of the parts, most of the interior, all the good body panels, the wheels, the suspension that was in the front of the car. One thing that can't even be mildly misconstrued as saving money is how much we have wrapped up in these wheels and tires.
Oh.
This was something I didn't anticipate, but when I bought this, I learned very quickly that you could not get Demon logo tires. Not only that, you couldn't even get tires in this size, so in the end, I ended up finding a new old stock, I guess, set, if you will, of Demon tires. Now you might be wondering exactly how much 5-year-old Demon logo tires cost. $1,640, which sounds fine for new tires, but considering they're rock hard, you saw us try to use them at the drag strip later on, they didn't do anything. They're in terrible shape. That stinks.
I bet they look sick.
It looks sick. There's that. We needed one new wheel because one of the wheels on the car was absolutely shot.
Looks straight.
There's proof. The new wheel, that ran $860. Not too bad. There was another wheel that we had refurbished by our friends at Alloy Wheel Repair. That ran us $400. All in at this point. Now that we started acquiring some new parts and our first of many parts cars, we were at $26,800. And you can almost see at this point that things aren't going to go the way I wanted them to go. I originally kind of anticipated, and I say kind of because I didn't know what to expect, I thought we'd maybe be at $40,000 to $50,000.
Wrong.
Now, video number 4, we did get a little break from spending. This was tearing down the rest of the chassis. It was a lot. It was, I think, a week or more of being in a respirator in the middle of the summer trying to get all this garbage out. It was not a good time. We did find a lot of interesting stuff, which I guess you guys can go back and watch the video. We won't get into that in this episode because that's not what we're here to talk about. Yeah. Video number 5. This is where things really go downhill. At least from a spending front. This is where we got parts car number 2, that purple red eye that was a piece of shit. That thing was terrible.
And everybody thought that we made the wrong move because we didn't fix it. It was a piece of crap.
But it did give us a lot more parts, at least so I thought. It didn't really turn out that way at the end. This busted up purple red eye cost $31,000. Just the going rate of red eyes, they're not cheap at all. Though on this car, we did part 99% of it out, which I only needed a few very specific things. We recouped our money on selling the drivetrain out of that car, so I added up to roughly, we'll call it $1,000 that I actually paid for parts out of that car. So while I didn't have a ton of money wrapped up in that, the new parts that started to come in, that is the problem. That's the real big spend here. I had a brand new quarter panel come in, all the stuff to get that new Demon hood set up, Demon logo intake filter. I had suspension parts like the Demon specific springs starting to come in, the rear seat delete, which is another really awesome part. That first round of new parts that we got from Steve White Motors was $2,430. And then there was the hood itself, which took forever to show up. I don't think that they were making these hoods when I ordered it. They were VIN restricted. I needed to provide proof of ownership of that car to even be able to get it, but they did eventually send it, but that was, I think, the last body piece that ever showed up for the thing. It took forever. The hood itself, along with a few other parts that came in, a year later when we finally got the hood, it was like $1,200, which surprisingly isn't that bad.
For an exclusive hood, it wasn't.
Yeah, for the trouble you have to go through to get it, I thought that would be more. One thing that did come in a bit over budget was the engine. We did like aftermarket rods, pistons, but I didn't go overboard. I didn't want to make crazy power in it. It ended up being $11,440. The good thing is, it was built by one of the best Hemi engine builders in the country, BES. They did a great job, it's still in the car, running really well. So I have to say it was worth it, even if it was expensive.
We proved it was worth it.
We proved.
Yeah.
When we made over 1,000 horsepower later, which cost even more money. Another thing that was way out of line cost-wise, at least to me, compared to what I expected, was the valve covers.
Oof.
$800.
It's true.
$800 for a pair of valve covers. I'm just telling you, an LS would never. They're like $100. And then in this episode, this is also where things started picking up with actually repairing the body.
Yeah.
We had our friends come down from Industry Garage. They welded on a new A-pillar, the quarter panel, the new roof. They did all the body work that I didn't feel comfortable doing, you know, aside from paint. And that was another $880, which that seemed cheap. That seemed good to me, being the same price as valve cars.
They struggled with that chassis. Yeah, I do remember that, and I kind of feel bad for them because that was a rough thing.
You mean struggle in the way that they had to ratchet strap the A-pillar to the lift post and pull it over? That kind of struggle.
Yes.
What it took for us to get it to this point was exactly $43,550. I knew it was over budget. I didn't know it was as over budget as it was about to be. Now, one of the things that we haven't touched on that really helps offset the cost of some of these wild builds are our video partners. We've worked with a ton of awesome brands, but at the top of the list is Cars for Bid, specifically because they help you guys buy cars from the salvage auction just like I do. Salvage auction has a virtually unlimited supply of cars to choose from for your next project car or even your next daily driver. The problem is, unless you own a salvage yard or maybe a car dealership, you can only bid on a small fraction of them. But with Cars for Bid, you don't have to worry about any of that. You can bid on all the cars at all the auctions, all without any annual fee or registration cost. Since I've partnered with them, I've heard from a ton of you who've used them to buy from salvage auction for the very first time with none of the headaches, none of the confusion. And one of the best parts about Cars for Bid is how simple they make the whole process. Once you find a car you want to bid on, you can place a pre-bid and hope it wins, or you can participate in the live auction. If your bid wins, well, congrats on the new car. But if it doesn't win, your deposit gets refunded, you're not out a dime. Even if you're considering getting in the salvage business to make a living like I do, Cars for Bid's a great way to try it out first before you spend all the time, effort, and money trying to get the proper licensing. And just to help you guys out, they're going to give you $50 back on your first car purchase when you sign up with my link in the description. Now let's get back to the money. Moving on to video number 6, we didn't spend a ton of money here. I did take that purple red eye that showed up to the shop without keys over to a local Dodge dealership and had them program keys. It ended up being $420. The, I guess, silver lining there is we got to start that car and found out that one also does awesome burnouts. Now, my genius plan here, back when I thought this would work, was to take our newly sorted electrical system out of that red eye because it is a 2020. It does have electric power steering. I thought that was exactly what I needed. I was going to take it, put it all in the Demon, home free. We're done. We got it. Project complete.
Yeah, and quack, quack, quack.
Yeah,
Nope.
Ultimately, that does not work out at all. If we built this car as an automatic, everything in that red eye would have worked out fine. Though it ultimately wasn't worth it, though it didn't work out, this was a major turning point. It's the first time we ever saw that thing power up. Especially then when we didn't know that it was all going to fail. It felt awesome. It felt like we were close, and that was probably the most special moment to me in the series to that point. The only other money we spent in this video was $1,500, and that was on the set of Demon seats, which we got super lucky to find. Those were only $1,500. So at the end of this video where we had made massive progress, we didn't really add that much cost-wise. It was $45,470. Really, every video from here on out, the money just starts, you know. The Mantic clutch, beautiful, awesome clutch. It's one of the best parts about that car. It makes it really easy and fun to drive. It hasn't slipped, hasn't gave us any issues, but it was $3,000. You gotta pay to play, that's the old saying. One other part that I was really hoping to get off parts cars was the radiator support. Ended up having to buy it new. That, along with a few other random parts like a sway bar, was $526 new from Dodge. And then there's the supercharger.
Yeah.
That thing was f***ed. It was bad. The lid ended up being warped. We had to get a new lid for it. The only thing good was the actual blower unit itself and the rotors. Everything else was trash. The bricks, the seals. Ended up having to rebuild the whole thing. We used our friends at Kong Performance. He ended up helping us out on the porting of it, but because it needed so many different parts, it still ended up being $1,960, almost $2,000. Then there was one of the coolest things we did to this car, that patina kit. It was like by Poppy's Patina, I believe it was. It was $180. Other than that, the only other real expense we had in this video was a few parts to restore the steering rack, tie rods, inner and outer, a couple boots, $220 for a grand total of $51,356. Video number 8, it's more of the same, just money. The headers by Stainless Works, love them. Awesome, nice set of headers, $1,650, which is reasonable for a quality set of headers, but it still adds a lot of money to a build like this. The coolant crossover tube we had to buy that goes on the back of the supercharger because the original one was melted. It had turned to molten metal. That was $150. The coil packs we bought for the car by Rip, $480 for those. Fuel injectors.
Ah,
No.
that hurts.
Fuel injectors.
That's one of the most expensive, underrated part that I think people don't realize.
I bought the best of the best injectors for the car. Injector Dynamics. They were our cost, meaning we have a wholesale account to get parts through the shop here. Our cost on those was $1,700. Then we had the new carrier bearing support. That was $185. The Barton short shifter, $500. We have our improved racing catch can, another awesome piece, $250. We added a lot of nice parts, a lot of critical parts to the build, but at the end of this video, we're at $56,021. This was where we started having really big gaps in the videos, and I know that was kind of a
concern for all of you guys.
yeah, and I do feel like at some point here we kind of let you down, and I hope I explained it clear enough in the videos, but we sent the Demon up to a shop, a local shop that's very good with these things, to see if they could figure out these electrical issues, in which we could not get the car to crank. Because it was on an automatic wiring harness, it would not work with a manual transmission. In the end, they couldn't figure it out either. We called it $1,000 for their time and effort. They did put in the time, they put in the work, but ultimately, from a build budgeting standpoint, it was a waste of $1,000. In this video, though, we did get the car painted, and this was a massive help by our friends at Top Coat Garage.
Yeah.
They helped us out and painted this thing, at least the parts that needed to be converted to red, for nothing. They just helped us out as a favor, so we've developed a really good relationship with them. We try to help each other out whenever we can, and now we've sent... You know what I just realized?
What?
On the spot. Isn't there that tip that, like, drug dealers will give you, like, a free first one? We've sent 10, 15 plus cars up there for paint work. They're good.
Yeah.
I felt a lot of pressure at this point to get this thing done, not only for you guys, but to prove that we could complete this project. I was at PRI. I had this car at PRI, actually. A car came up for sale. A car came up for auction, rather, and I saw no other option but to buy it. It was a manual 2018 Hellcat. They're so incredibly rare, and it just turned out
Wide
that was
body. You forget that.
exactly what I needed to fix that thing. Electronic power steering wiring harnesses, and they're built to be manual, meaning we could buy that thing, take every bit of the electrical system out of it again, just like we did with the Red Eye, only this time it was supposed to work, throw it in the Demon, and be golden. The problem is, that car ran $40,000.
It was clean.
It was very clean. It ended up being a theft car.
Yeah.
It had a busted out window, some missing interior. We fixed it up, drove it around, had a good time in it, and then stripped it completely for that. I do have a plan for that car. It might not look like much at this moment, but it is still here. It's still intact, at least all the important parts, and the plan I have for it is coming together slowly but surely. I think after the Demon 170, we're going to go full bore on that one. Now, this might not be the right way to do this, but because we're using that car for another project, and because we took a lot of parts out of it for other projects, everything that I don't need out of that car for the project we're about to take on with it, we've put to good use or sold some of it. I think we've recouped a few bucks, but either way, because that chassis is going to be a new project, I'm not adding it into the cost of this build. Maybe I just don't want to hurt my feelings that bad when I add that into here too, but we're going to have that be its own thing. Maybe we'll do a cost video on that down the road. It was worth it. The car finally cranked. Yes! Oh, there we go. We got it running. The only money we spent was $120 on a battery. We had to do the dual fuel pump wiring to get the dual fuel pump that comes in the Demon to work with that single wiring pump harness out of the basic Hellcat, the gray car. That was $500, and then we have $500 in dyno time. So naturally, the logical thing to do when you've just celebrated finishing a project, when you just put it on the dyno, is drive it and enjoy it, Yeah, no, it didn't do that. 800 horsepower is cool, but 1,000 horsepower, that's objectively more cool. We need more power is basically more or less what I'm getting at here. So we did a nitrous kit by Nitrous Outlet, $850. A 4-fuel system, which was a massive upgrade from the stock dual fuel pumps, stock fuel rails we had in the car. That was $2,600 alone. An ATI balancer, which already came on our new engine, but it was the smaller version. We needed the bigger version for more boost.
Of course.
That was another $630, though I was able to sell the one that came on the engine from BES for $450. So it was really only a $180 upgrade, which $180 for a few more pounds of boost. I'll take
Worth it.
I'll take it. There was the ice tank we installed to cool things down in the trunk from Cords Performance Racing, $1,850. A differential brace to protect the drivetrain. Yeah, $200. And then we sent it up to Big 3 Racing. We did the Holley setup along with a gateway to make the Holley computer work with all the factory electronics. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wouldn't that have probably solved your issue, you know, way back when you were scrambling around buying other Hellcats to throw in there? Yes, it would have, but the product wasn't developed yet. So that kind of screwed everything up. It came out after I already had the car running. So it's just bad luck, I suppose. Either way, that ran $3,470, but it was well worth it. At this point, after we got on the dyno and successfully made 1,000 horsepower, we were into it for $67,291. And then we started breaking things. Took it straight from the dyno to the track, smoked something. Found out in very short order that we broke an axle. So what do? Put stock axles back in it, ready to go. I took it in the parking lot, tried to do a burnout, smoked the drive shaft.
You break something?
Stupid. Don't do that. But at that point, I had had about enough of going through the whole stock drivetrain song and dance. So it's time to upgrade the axles, the drive shaft, and some rear end bushings to kind of lock everything down. Our drive shaft shop axles, $1,900. Our drive shaft shop 4-inch aluminum drive shaft, $1,070, and BMR bushings to stick in the rear end to again lock everything down, to stop it from shaking around, and hopefully have the last of the drivetrain breaking, $220. That took us to $70,481. I did go back and add another $1,000 just because I'm sure there's a lot of missed. We're gonna call it $71,480. I do strongly believe it's a car that I'll never sell, partly because nobody's ever gonna want to buy the thing. Like,
Yeah, that's one minor detail, but at the same time, it's really cool.
It is special to me, and it is also, on a side note, the first series that I ever posted on YouTube that really like took off far beyond what I ever thought I would be doing on YouTube.
Yes.
I didn't think anybody wanted to watch the stupid stuff I was making. I do have to feel like this car, in some way, shape, or form, kind of, one, reignited my passion for building cars, but almost all of that was because I got to share it with you guys and got to talk cars and just BS and have a good time and, you know, work through problems that I was having with my car in my shop with random people around the world. I do want to ask you guys to do one thing for me, and that is to go down in the comments and just let me know, is the Demon 170 build going to come in more expensive or less expensive than the original Demon build?
Keep the track on it and see if he's making better financial decisions now.
Oh, that's not that's not happening. But you know, we try sometimes. Regardless of whether this whole thing was an exercise in why you shouldn't take on rebuild projects like this because of how much it can cost, I couldn't be happier to be into another Demon project. It doesn't make sense. Cars don't make sense. This whole thing doesn't make sense, but it's a good time. So I guess we'll enjoy it while it lasts.